Welcome to The Lock Shop with Nielson and Hustler, powered by Coolbet Canada.
.02 on The Lock Shop. Thank you very much for being here on Edmonton Sports Talk. Dustin Nielson with you. Huss is going to be joining shortly. And, lots to get to. Good discussion coming up around the world of sports. Late night in the NHL. The Oilers are in action. I don't know if Jake is watching. Jake, I was going to text you my EST parlay. It's going to be McDavid over 1.5 points, a Hyman goal, and the Oilers to win on the money line. I'll text that to Jake as well, just in case he's not watching right now. Let's bring in Huss from Winnipeg Sports Talk. WST firing up at noon Edmonton time today. Huss, how you doing, buddy?
Oh, I'm doing well. Fun night at the rink last night.
No doubt.
Kyle Connor with the natural Hattie in the first 14 minutes of the game. The Millie was on the table last night. Barely missed a beautiful deflection for his fourth. And I don't know if you guys have that same thing, but if someone scores 5 goals in a game, someone wins $1 million.
Is that through Save On Foods?
Something like that. One of those groceries. It used to be the Safeway Score and Win, and we had to deal with Cassie Campbell and Gord Miller commercials 50 times each game. I play to win, Gord. All Jet fans know that one. But so anyways, the Millie didn't happen last night, but a complete beatdown of the Canucks did. And, it's funny, man. We're really focused on our own teams here, but it's been impossible to ignore all the noise about Vancouver. So I was really interested to see kind of what they were when they came in last night, coming off a 3-0 shutout against the Toronto Maple Leafs. And they were dreadful. Their defending was amateur, and they had absolutely no fight. That is a team, Dusty, that it obviously has some major internal issues right now. The only thing that really surprised me was just Rick Tocchet was very calm after the game. It's sort of like he just realizes what he's dealing with.
Is that what it is? That's what I was going to say. Is he kind of waving the white flag a little bit here or what?
Well, I listen, he certainly didn't go off on his team like I kind of expected him to last night, considering what we saw. But I will just say this. It's a lot more fun following and being a part of what's going on with the Winnipeg Jets right now than I think the Vancouver Canucks. And I'm sure you would agree, the Edmonton Oilers as well, who are actually in action tonight against a big rival of the Jets in the Minnesota Wild. Man,
the Minnesota Wild are banged up right now, hey? Like their best guys. That's just how it is. It's that's why the Oilers are -2. Well, I think it was -200. Then it was moved to just briefly -199. I think it's like a -215, -216 on the road tonight against still what I would deem a pretty good Minnesota team, but they are just absolutely banged up right now. So the Oilers play tonight against Minnie. Then they're in Colorado tomorrow, and then they wrap up a trip in Vancouver against those Canucks on Saturday. So, that's going to be interesting. Induced Comics over in the Nasty Chat says, guys, is there a Lock Shop poker tournament scheduled? Well, we have one on our schedule. I don't know if it's actually been created over on the poker feed yet at Coolbet. Jake is here. He can probably chime in a little bit more on that over on the Nasty Chat. But we will be doing our next poker tournament on Wednesday, January 29th. And I'm very much looking forward to it. That's going to be a good one. If you've played in these before with us, you will know that they're a great time. If you haven't yet, I'm telling you, for a $30 buy-in, you will have a terrific time unless you go all in on Trip Queens with a chance to win a trip to Costa Rica and get blown out in 8 minutes. Outside of that, it's usually a pretty fun affair. So January 29th, be starting around 8 o'clock Edmonton time, 9 o'clock Winnipeg time. And you know what? You want to make a deep run in this thing, it's probably going to be about 3 hours for you.
Yeah, it's a hell of a lot of fun. So mark that down. I think we're 4 or 5 in already, and we continue to grow when we're doing it. So
this will be number 5 at least. I'm pretty sure it's number 5. Yeah,
I see Mark and Fantasy dropping the KFCs in the chat. Yeah, serving up a quick 3-piece in the first period for the Jets. The Jets last night. Hey, back to the Wild for 1 sec.
Yeah.
Yeah, they go into tonight. Spurgeon, IR, Kaprizov, IR, Brock Faber out, their number one defenseman, and Jonas Brodin. On a positive note, they've got Gustafsson back, who's been so good for them this year. But they're taking on water right now, just with the fact that they don't have their big guns. And for a team that's already in cap hell and, missing a big chunk of what they should be able to allocate to players, it's a tough time and a tough spot for the Minnesota Wild. And I've sort of been assuming that the Wild would sort of fall off a little bit, but I mean, they're still 7-3 in their last 10. They haven't had Kaprizov for a month. I mean, I give them a lot of credit. I mean, they haven't been particularly good against the Jets this year. The Jets swept them again. And I think Minnesota in the 3 games only scored 2 goals against Winnipeg. But against the rest of the league, they have been a really, really tough out. And the funny thing is they're way better on the road than they are at home. Like, they're 11-9-1 at XL Energy Center. They're 16-4-3 on the road. Now, those splits, I think, will kind of come back to the mean over the course of the second half of the season. But they are where they are right now. And, I mean, listen, Dallas, with that win last night, is just a point back of Minnesota with a game in hand. And the Avalanche are 3 back, having played 1 more game. Jets now with a 5-point lead in the division. So everyone in Winnipeg will be Oilers fans tonight, I think, on that one.
Let me ask you this one from a Jets perspective, Huss. Which team in the West do you view as the Jets' biggest roadblock to getting to a Stanley Cup final?
Well, I mean, listen, until they beat Colorado in the playoffs, Colorado is going to be that team probably in their division. I think Dallas is right there with them, especially depending on what they do come deadline. But the Jets have played well against those teams, and I think they can. Listen, I think it's the Vegas Golden Knights, to be honest. Like, just based on what we've seen from them so far this year, what they've done before in the playoffs. I mean, I think Edmonton or Vegas coming out of the Pacific, if the Jets were fortunate enough to win those first 2 rounds, would really, really be tough. I think just the way the Jets play and, having Hellebuck, I think the matchup is maybe a little bit better against Edmonton because, I mean, both these teams can score. If they're going to be trading goals, the Jets will be fine with that. And, if you're trading chances and you got Hellebuck in net, you're probably going to be on the right end of that. Vegas has done a really good job of playing that playoff style hockey against the Jets, in the past, and really to everybody. That's why they are where they are right now.
Yep.
I think they're pretty deep. They're very experienced. They've got that big blue line, and they defensively, they're the biggest challenge. Essentially, what they do to the Winnipeg offense. Keeping them to the perimeter at times. Basically, what the Jets are doing to other teams right now. Vegas has done very well to Winnipeg. So we'll worry about Vegas or Edmonton, though, in the 3rd round if they're fortunate enough to get through a real tough opponent and then another one in the Central Division. But I really do think that, like has been for the last few years, the West, the Pacific at least, is going to end up being Vegas and the Edmonton Oilers. My big question is, do you think Vancouver, all this time, I thought Vancouver was a playoff team.
So did I.
Dude, after watching them last night and knowing what Calgary's doing right now and, the push of, teams like St. Louis, I'm not sure Vancouver's there. Do they have the talent to be a playoff team? Yeah, but that team is so off right now and so far from what they were last year when they won 50 games. After watching what I saw last night, I think I'd be betting the no for Vancouver to be in the playoffs. I mean, that is just an absolute mess.
Well, it's very unlike the East where there's so many teams that are kind of in the thick of it for the final playoff spot or two. It is Calgary, it is Vancouver, it is St. Louis right now is what you're looking at. And I'll say this as a Canadian hockey fan and a guy working here in Edmonton, I got a lot of time for a Canucks Flames playoff race in the second half, mostly because they're going to get that spot, and then the Jets or the Golden Knights or the Oilers are going to walk all over them in the first round of the playoffs, which will be somewhat amusing, I think. But when you watched the Canucks last night, and I guess I'll get a closer look at them just by watching the game on Saturday on TV, Like, do they, to you, does that look like a team that, and I think Penner's Pancakes or somebody pointed out that JT Miller played like 14 and a half minutes last night. Does this look like a team to you that they trade one of those two guys and things get back on track, or is there bigger issues there?
Well, listen, the bigger issue, I think, is internal, and it's crazy. You're talking about getting rid of one of your top two centers to make things better. But I think there's something to be said for that. Like, I don't know if it's a coincidence that when JT Miller took his leave, Elias Paterson exploded and was playing his best hockey of the year. I mean, Paterson was invisible a good portion of the game last night. I mean, it was really a no-show for a lot of guys on that team. You know, I was just talking with Kevin Woodley. We'll have it coming up on WST. You know, he covers the team on a daily basis. He said it's clear that JT Miller is probably hurt, like dealing with something, because he's just off of what he has been anywhere close to his best. And then, you know, I felt sorry for Quinn Hughes. Like, he is so much fun to watch, just as an aside. Like, the edges he has, the, you know, ability to change direction, his vision, what a fun player to watch. But he also has his defensive shortcomings. We saw that last night, and the Jets are a team that'll make you pay for them. But, I mean, I don't know how you make your team better by trading one of those guys in the short term, but with the way things are right now, I mean, the team just looks broken. And our buddy Sean Reynolds went into the room yesterday, and he goes, you know, it's eerily similar to the 2019 Jets when they were kind of imploding from the middle, from within. And that really set the team back and sort of wasted a couple years. And, you know, considering the prime of the guys they have right now, it is unfortunate for Vancouver to be where they are right now. But I know a lot of fans in other cities are here for it, if you will.
Remember that the Hockey News cover that was like Winnipeg Jets? Was it 2021 Stanley Cup? Yeah.
2019.
It was, that came out in 2019, or they were saying they were going to be the 2019 Stanley Cup champs?
Yeah. It came out in like 2016 or 2017.
Man, that's that long ago now? I remember that cover very well. Yeah. Jeez, that was a long time ago.
And to be honest, I mean, that was not an outlandish prediction.
At the time, you're right.
They went to the conference finals in 2018 and probably should have beaten Vegas, but fell short. And then the next year, at New Year's, they were second overall in the league. I think they had about a 10-point lead in the Central Division. And then all of that internal stuff sort of blew up in the second half of the year. Guys were hating each other, and it was toxic. And again, it just totally reminiscent of what's happening here with the Canucks. And I mean, they went from where they were to paying about $500 the rest of the way, ended up losing the division title, having to play St. Louis in the first round. And you'll recall St. Louis at New Year's was like last place in the NHL. And that was when they went on that crazy run. They ended up bouncing the Jets in the first period, or in their first round. It's the last we ever saw Dustin Byfuglien in the National Hockey League. And then, you know, the Jets were sort of left picking up the pieces for the next couple seasons. But that truly was the window, those couple of years. But I'll tell you what, they've kind of reset. When you think about the Line trade now, as much as it sort of sucked and everyone loved the guy and, you know, whatever, he got moved. I mean, you bring in Dubois, that was good for a bit. Then it was sort of a disaster. And then it was all the drama around. Like, Patrick Laine has now turned into Gabriel Velarde and Alex Iafallo and Rasmus Kupari, who are all playing big roles on the team right now. So once again, Chevy finds a way out of a very difficult situation and ends up looking pretty good.
Thank God for the Los Angeles Kings, hey? Holy smokes.
Rob Blake, that's I mean, to think that they did all that and then basically had to just punt on the guy.
Yeah, and they're still good. And they're still a good hockey team, right? Like, they gave up 3 really good pieces. And then the guy that they brought back ended up being a disaster. They basically just had to get rid of him, and they're still good. So funny thing is about that trade. I mean, I think they sort of had to take Kemper as part of the deal. Kemper's been good, really good for LA this season.
And I mean, you just saw, what was it, 1-0?
It was 1-0. Kemper, I thought he was excellent. The one goal was one-timer from Nurse that he made a great save on, and the rebound bounced to a wide-open McDavid with a wide-open net. That was the only goal he allowed. And going into that game, we were looking at it because we were prepping for that game. I think he was 12-2-3 with like a .921 save percentage and a 2-point low something goals against. Like, he's been having a really good season there for the Kings.
No, he has been. And then the way the Kings play, like, I mean, I mentioned to you that game Friday night here in Winnipeg that ended up being 1-1 and the Kings won in OT. I mean, dude, the first two periods were as dull and low event as any game I think we've seen this season. The Jets ended up creating a couple power play opportunities, and that ace power play got them on the board, and they ended up winning it. But, I mean, I guess in that division, especially going up against a team like Edmonton, the Kings know they're not going to win 6-5 games. So they're really instilling, a defensive system that eliminates high danger scoring chances, keeps teams to the perimeter, even if it costs the LA Kings most of their chances as well. Entertainment value might not be there nightly with the Kings, but they're getting points, and you can't argue with where they're sitting in the standings.
Just 2 games in the National Hockey League tonight, which is fine. We'll hit on these, and then we'll recap TGL last night. There's a bunch of you were at the hockey game last night, but I can chime in on that, and we'll take a look at some NFL. There's some futures that are out there now we can get to. We haven't talked CFL in a little while. There's been a lot of CFL news there as well. But just the 2 games tonight in the National Hockey League. The Edmonton Oilers -217 favorites on the road against Minnesota. Jake was watching, so I'm sure they'll get that EST parlay up here. If it's not already up, it will be up by the end of the show. That'll be McDavid over 1.5 points, Hyman goal, and Oilers on the money line. The other game tonight, Carolina -200 on the road in Buffalo against the Sabres. And maybe just before we get to that, because it has the Sabres in there, and I kind of view them on the same plane as the San Jose Sharks, I cannot believe that Detroit cost us the parlay last night. Like, the Habs hit. Who was our other one? The St. Louis Blues. And Detroit gets doubled up at home 6-3 by the Sharks when the Sharks had lost 8 of 10 and Detroit had won 7 in a row. Like, I was angry. Like, I was just legitimately angry when I saw that last night. I was pissed off.
I did play Montreal by itself, so it ended up being an okay night last night. But I was there, row 1 in the 300 level. I've grabbed a beer. We're sitting down. It's the second period. I look over, and they've got the score in the power ring, and I look, and it's San Jose 5, Detroit 3, and it was a legitimate like beer spit out the middle. What the fuck? I know. You gotta be kidding me. So well, there goes Detroit's 7-game winning streak. And of all teams to do it against, we were not expecting the San Jose Sharks. That was unfortunate. Otherwise, I mean, a pretty good night. I mean, many of our leans, but I guess when we're doing a 3-gamer, if the team that we're the most confident doesn't get it done, it ends up blowing up the whole thing. So that was definitely very, very unfortunate. Just speaking of last night, Dallas got that win over Toronto. Toronto's in a bit of a funk right now. Big win for Boston coming back and beating the Lightning 6-2. Boston's kind of trying to show some signs of life. And hey, while everyone's talking about Hellebuck, and justifiably so with the season he's having, you notice what Logan Thompson is doing in Washington this year? And I still remember him getting traded at the draft in Vegas from the Golden Knights to Washington. He's now 19-2-3 on the season. He's been a big story in addition to the resurgence of Alex Ovechkin. And the Capitals are 29-10-5 right now on the year. So big win there. And Vegas, that was another one that we didn't have on the parlay, but I kind of thought was a very, very likely bet, and we thought it was a good number. They lose to Nashville last night. So some good stuff. The plus 130 on the Habs was a nice one, though. They're winning a bunch of games right now. And, as we just discussed, like, I know we were talking about Calgary and Vancouver sort of battling for that wild card spot in the West. The East right now, Without looking, you know who's in that final wild card spot?
Columbus.
Yes.
Yeah, Noodles brought that up today. We had him on today. I'm cheated. But they've been rotating. Like Montreal was in there for a bit. Ottawa's Raider. Like it's going to be a hell of a race. Now, I don't think I'm buying into any of those teams going on a run and knocking off a number one seed. But that's going to be fun to see that many teams. Because what was it? Was it Buffalo? Who's last in the conference? Aren't they like 7 points out of the playoff spot? All right, how many points are they out
now? 11.
Okay, it was like 7 or 8 a couple days ago.
But if you're like the Islanders are second last in the East, and they're 7 out.
Okay,
with a game in hand. So I mean, it really every one of those teams feels like if they can go on a bit of a heater, like Columbus has done. Like Columbus is 8-2 in their last 10, and all of a sudden they're right there. And you know, we were talking about kind of one wild card spot, but realistically, we're talking about 2 wild card spots because the Boston Bruins are 1 point up on Columbus. They played 2 more games. Like on points percentage, I think Columbus is actually ahead of Boston. So all of a sudden we're talking, like, I mean, the Leafs are in, Florida's in, Tampa should be in just because they've only played 42 games. You got Washington, Jersey, and Carolina in the Metropolitan. And then, 2 spots up for grabs. Boston and Columbus in them right now. But Ottawa's 1 point back of Columbus, 2 points back of Boston, and they played 43 games. Montreal, 1 point back of Ottawa, playing 43 games. The Red Wings are 44, 4 back, but again, with games in hand. Even the Flyers and the Penguins, who are also at 44, although they played a couple extra games, right around there. And then there's the Rangers. The Rangers, I guess they've sort of steadied the ship, 4-4-2, just 500 in their last 10 games and 500 for the season. Now, that gives you 82 points in the season, which is usually good for a top 10 draft pick. But as we sit right now with such a low bar for playoffs in the East, I'm kind of with you. We're going to get out of the side. I wonder what that does to the trade market, though.
I know. It's going to...
Like, a bunch of these teams that feel like they're in, do they potentially hold on to their guys a little bit more? Because they certainly, I mean, everyone is pretty much in it other than maybe Buffalo.
Well, and that's what I wonder if a few of those teams, let's say there's 5-6 teams there. If 4 of them are like, we're not going to sell just, do the other 2 just say, screw it? We're going to, like, our guy's value has gone up because those teams aren't moving. And then they take advantage of it. Like the Pittsburgh Penguins, for example. Does Dubas just go, man, this is not what we're building towards anyway. Like, let's just move some pieces and we can probably get a bit more of a premium because some of these other teams are hanging on. So it very much makes the deadline for probably like half the teams that we would view as sellers kind of foggy heading into it. Now there's still time here to find some separation out there, which could change things. But I think I'd describe it at best as foggy right now.
There's some good stuff in the chat. Penner's Pancakes. Question Huss.
I love this. I was going to get to this.
What is your celebrity status when you sit in the stands at the rink? Do you get hounded quite a bit by fans? It's not hounded, but lots of love in the 300s. That's for sure. I mean, it's listen, I have a way different connection with all the fans because I'm there with them. I mean, a lot of the guys, in the press box, they never even get down to the concourse in an intermission. And I've carved a different space in the media world here in Winnipeg, and it is the most fun one that there is. I think some of the guys are a little envious of the operation. But
I'm not exaggerating when I tell people like your norm walking into Cheers in all of Winnipeg. Like whenever I've ever gone anywhere with you in Winnipeg, it's just even at the what was that breakfast joint we went to that one time, that one morning before I left? Remember what was that? We went there. You're like, you got to come to this place. Even when we went there.
We went to Sal's.
Yeah, into Sal's. And people, the waitress like, hey, Huss. I'm just like, man, this is unbelievable. Like, everybody knows this guy. It's insane. It's the norm walking into Cheers, but it's Huss everywhere in Winnipeg is a very accurate description of this guy and how he operates. But you have made, you nailed it, Huss, in that you've created a really fun spot for yourself in Winnipeg. It's well done. It's well done.
It's, I mean, we do. I mean, our show is a little different than most of the other ones. And listen, that's the beauty. And you're able to do this now with Edmonton Sports Talk too. I mean, there was always some old restraints when you're working for a big company of a bunch of people telling you what to do as opposed to doing things as you would like it. And listen, the response has been great. And the bottom line is, I mean, I always say it's so much fun. It never feels like work because we'd be having like the conversations I'm having with you right now are the exact same conversation I'd be having with somebody at Win City at the bar top tonight when we're watching a game, and just make a point of getting around there, meeting a lot of people, and it's good for business for the show. But yeah, listen, I mean, when the team plays great, there's lots of high fives. When the team plays bad, you'll get a few live chats, if you will, people just saying stuff in and around. But no, it's fun, and it's a heck of a lot better than being up in the press box. No cheers, no beers. No,
I gotta chime in here with this big U comment. It says Huss sits in the 300s and buys groceries at 7-Eleven so he can go to Arrowhead for the playoffs. Right? That makes sense. You got to fight.
Hey,
you got to
checking off all the boxes.
Oh, that's too good.
Duck Dad. Huss has 300 energy, but can his sponsors not get him in the 200s at least? Or is all that WST cash safe for Chiefs road trips? To be honest, and again, and I do feel it's important to, like, especially here in Winnipeg, and there's talks about the crowds and stuff like that. Like, I can also speak to fans, as a season ticket holder. I mean, I'm sort of putting out the cash like everybody else is, and it does put you in a bit of a different situation as opposed to one of these media types that never pays for anything, kind of telling fans how to do or how to spend their money. Like, it does, I think, give me a whole different level of sort of connection with those people when we're having the conversations. But Duck Dad, I do have a pair in the 200s as well that we've had since day one. My folks are getting a little older, so I've taken over half of those. And then I've got the seats upstairs. So I'm kind of back and forth in between. But my favorite place, also because it's about half the price, is row 1 and 316. You're cordially invited if you come out to the Peg.
There you go. You can go see us in the Peg. You were at the game last night. Did you PVR TGL and hit it again when you got home tomorrow's Golf League?
I did not PVR it. I'd forgot, but I was getting the updates from Patty that our Jupiter boys were getting smoked.
Oh, man, Patty was on a full-blown meltdown in the chat last night.
But then afterwards, I saw the highlights. And first of all, Tiger's entrance, Eye of the Tiger, amazing.
Yeah, brilliant.
They stunk, though. But seeing Kiz with that hosel rocket out of the bunker, off of it, and the reaction of everyone, that was almost as good and as viral as like a hole-in-one. Like, that made it, like, I mean, it was everywhere last night. And like Tiger and the guys laughing, like, it kind of shows like the fun nature of this. And I'm sure it'll get pretty competitive when the stakes are high and they're down later on. But it's been, I think, pretty successful as far as just showing off some of the personalities of these guys and creating something very different than a normal golf product. I think they've already made more inroads on something new and unique than Liv has in the 3 years they've been doing that tour.
I mean, in North America, 100%. I mean, I don't know what Livs look like. What do you think the Liv buzz is like around the world? Like, is it different than here?
Australia. It's only big in Australia.
Yeah,
like those Liv events in Australia were huge. And of course, they've got Cam Smith and some of the top Aussies. But no, I mean, there's no Liv buzz. I mean, I guess the Spain event, now that John Rahm is playing there, there was a few more people coming out. But I mean, this whole thing, they had a pretty neat plan, with the teams and with relegation. Well, we found that's an entire sham this year. I mean, Brandon Grace and Bubba Watson both played their way out of relegation, and then they just got re-signed and put in. So, I don't know. I mean, with the potential success of this TGL, which is, again, very different. I'm not comparing it to Liv. Liv's a tour that's competing with the PGA Tour in a different ways. But as I think in a couple years, the landscape is going to be a lot clearer for pro golf. And I don't know how they continue going down this road of a complete split and then bringing guys together for a few of the majors so far. But PGA Tour, I think, is still, all things considered, doing quite well. Liv has endless money, so I guess the question, does it really matter? Those guys are going to be good and getting paid. But at some point, it would be cool to kind of get this thing moving forward and get to a place that's better for all of professional golf, and in the end, better for the fans.
Excuse me, a couple of sneezes. TGL got the Nielsen family last night. We had it on while we were watching dinner, and I looked around. I was like, look at this. Week 2 of the TGL and the Nielsen family sitting at the kitchen table with the living room TV turned towards us so we could watch Tiger and the TGL.
What did the kids think? Because, again, this is not a regular golf broadcast. I would imagine that it might be sort of interesting just with the technology.
They're much more into this. Like, I don't think either of my kids would ever sit down with me and watch a tournament on a Sunday. Like, that's just, but last night, Marshall's like, what's the hammer? What's that about, Daddy? And I said, actually, son, Daddy technically not 100% sure on what happens with the hammer just yet. But look at this. He threw it in front of him. Like, so anyway, that's a good point, Huss, when you bring that up. Like, we said it earlier, like, they're probably trying to connect with not 7 and 9-year-olds, but, younger people who have a shorter attention span and don't want to spend all that time flipping around to guys they don't know because the other guys are walking down the course right now. Like, it's, yeah, I mean, I plan on having it on next Tuesday. Like, we have what do we have? We have basketball Monday, we have swimming Wednesdays, we got power skating Thursday. So Tuesday night's kind of like a night at home. And if the Oilers aren't playing, I think Tuesday nights TGL will be on at dinner time in the Nielsen household.
The TGL is going to be on, and there's some real potential for this too. Like, as I said, I didn't watch it all last night, but I did see a lot of people talking about the volcano hole. I mean, the fact that you're creating this stuff digitally gives you so many more options to have like wild shots and crazy visual holes that aren't real, but are real for the competition. And I think there are going to be some new people that sort of get a bit of the bug for this. And I think it'll be good for the golf simulator industry as well.
100%. And I you know what? I do want to see a competitive one. Like, I hope next week's isn't another absolute romp. Like, I want to see how entertaining it can be when the hammer is used in a close, I want to see, I want to see something close. The first 2 have been blowouts, but it still sucked me in. So, and you are right about the golf simulator business. Like, we just signed a deal with Gimme Golf, which is like just it's literally like 2 blocks away from the office, just kind of by coincidence. But their simulators, you go in there and they've got like 24 different lifts on the thing, and you changes your. I'm like, wow, I didn't even know that technology was already out there. And I don't think it's going to be. You see your Topgolfs and stuff. I would be surprised if TGLs don't start popping up around at least the United States with Tiger and Rory driving it.
Well, I mean, we're seeing more and more. Like, for instance, your new partners there, like the technology for the like longer the days where you're just hitting off a mat and it's telling you there are different surfaces to hit out of, different angles, and I mean it's just a way different experience that just continues to get better and better all the time. Like, the big places like TGLs, the one issue is just the square footage of how much room you need for something like that for the big one. But on a smaller scale, those same sort of games, I think are going to be open. And Topgolf, it's funny you mentioned Topgolf. I think there's been a few that have actually closed. Like, that was such a hot thing right off the bat, and it is really, really fun. And if you go to the Scottsdale or the Vegas one, it's a great place to party. The Vegas
one's a good time in the afternoon. You go hit it for a bit. And
hit the pool if you want for a little bit, then get back out and hit a few more shots. But I think, like, in places like Winnipeg or places like in Edmonton, I think you might get places that are sort of a combination sports lounge, but with more of these simulators, places that, you can actually start having leagues, or, maybe instead of just doing, because I mean, as far as I know, certainly the guys that I've done it with, we've gone down to the simulator and everyone just picks a course and you're basically just playing, whatever the course that you picked. Yeah. Stuff like the TGL, I think an introduction of new innovative games that are fun actually to play for people, are going to be proliferating a little bit more, and that'll be great for a place like what's it called? Gimme Golf.
That's Gimme. Yeah, this one's Gimme Golf. There's a bunch of them around town. It's funny you mentioned the places like with the lounge. Tom does pre and post twice a month at a Boston Pizza down by West Edmonton Mall. that has a golf simulator in the Boston Pizza Lounge now.
What?
Yes. Yes, that's a thing. They have their Coors Light golf simulator at the Westgate Boston Pizza. And when Tommy's doing his pre and post, he's sitting there, and if you look behind him, you can see the golf sim. And there's people in the Boston Pizza over there playing the golf sim.
I want to go there. I want to drop the hammer on Gazzola.
That's what you want to. I want to see Tommy doing his post game show, and you come up over from the golf simulator and throw down the hammer and be like, "There you go, Tommy! Double the points! Double the points!" Anyway, it was interesting last night. Let's slide over to the National Football League. Quick look at the lines. Detroit's still 9.5. Rams are still 6-point dogs. Ravens still 1-point favorite. Huss, was that Chiefs Texans line 8 or was it 8.5 yesterday? It's 8.5 now.
It was. It may have gone to 8.5 yesterday. It did open at 8.
Okay.
It's now 8.5. I think there's been an extra half point there, and then of course the Lions pushing 10 right now at 9.5. And the money line has changed just ever so slightly. Yesterday, Baltimore was minus 114. They're minus 112 right now. Bills were minus 103. They're now minus 104. But you know what I want to get to, speaking of the NFL, is we've got a couple days to get to. We have odds right now at Coolbet for the next coach of the vacant NFL teams and on options. And right off the bat, I almost spit my drink out when I saw the Dallas Cowboys odds. And let's face it, I mean, I always say to people when we're talking about things like awards or whatever, well, check what the odds makers are saying, because they're the ones that are actually taking risk involved in this and are more dialed in than anyone. Jason Witten is the favorite right now at plus 125. And then Deion Sanders and Kellen Moore at 2-1 each. Ben Johnson 10-1. But Jason Witten would be quite the interesting choice. Of course, Kellen Moore does have some history there. I think that one probably makes the most sense. And we do see Deion pop up on a couple of these lists. 2-1 for the Cowboys and tied with Ben Johnson at plus 175 for the next head coach of the Vegas Raiders.
It hurts me as a Lions fan to see Ben Johnson so high on all of those lists. I'm like, oh, damn it! This is enjoy
these next few games with Ben running your offense.
I know it's that one stings a little bit. The Witten one really blew my mind, though. I mean, that was one when I saw it, I was like, wait a second, what's going on here? But that does seem like a Dallas Cowboys thing to do, I guess. Do you think in the end, do you think Jerry just just convinces Deion? Just be like, that's the big splashy hire for the Dallas Cowboys that doesn't lead anywhere?
I think anyone would be absolutely nuts to hire Deion Sanders right now to be their head coach. I mean, that's where I am at. I mean, I know Jerry loves being relevant and having people talk about the Cowboys all the time, and they would certainly achieve that with Deion being their head coach. I think it would be a disaster, though, right now. And I'm not saying he can never be an NFL coach, but he's only been doing the college thing for a few years. So much of it has been the show, and I don't know whether Deion's act goes over as well within an NFL locker room as it has been at Jackson State and now Colorado. So, I mean, we'll pay attention to that. The Ben Johnson, just back to Ben for a minute, because he's on basically every team's list. Minus 250 for the head coach of the Bears. And that would be really interesting. First of all, he's got the young quarterback.
We have Caleb Williams to work with.
Staying in the division with 2 head-to-head games a year against the Detroit Lions would be pretty cool. Funny that Mike McCarthy at plus 350 is the second choice on the Chicago Bears list. The one thing is, and I should screenshot that for this when it all shakes down, I'm pretty sure there's a name or two at a pretty nice number somewhere in here that is going to be getting hired that we'll look back going, oh my God, we were staring at a 15-1 when we were talking about this before. Like Cliff Kingsbury, Belichick 20-1 for Dallas. That's an interesting one too.
That's the only list he's on, I think, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think he's going anywhere else. The Jags one's interesting. I'm not as familiar with Liam Cohen.
I looked. He's the offensive coordinator of the Bucs.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. In Tampa. Then Ben Johnson and Robert Saleh, I know, had an interview with the with the Jags, and then Aaron Glenn, who is the DC of the Lions, the favorite for the Saints job at minus 250. The one job that's not out there that I think he'll also be considered for is the Jets. Because the Jets also obviously need a coach, but the 5 are up right now. And if you want to go and spend a little time going through it all, Bears odds, Raiders odds, Jags odds, Saints, and Cowboys for the next coach of all of those teams up right now. And those usually aren't up for too long. So jump on that and then make your picks.
Should we talk some CFL, Huss? We haven't dove into the CFL in a little while.
Yeah, man.
Moving over. Have you seen my CFL tampering window? Did you see it?
I did not.
So we had, the CFL tampering window. Eric and I always joke about, the tampering window. Nisku Glass made us a CFL tampering window. So it's a big sheet of glass with all the CFL teams on it. And then, behind you can barely hear it. And so whenever we talk about CFL and free agent moves in the offseason, we bring up our CFL tampering window.
Well, let me ask you this. What did you think about that? What did you think about the Bombers signing Dylan Mitchell?
To be honest with you, I was a little surprised he was scooped up so quickly. I thought you might have to wait a little bit. But now I think I saw Derek Taylor make sense of it in that he can just very easily fill in Ontario Wilson's role. Which I would very much agree with. Like Dylan Mitchell's done that job. He's a similar receiver to Ontario Wilson. I like it as a fit. When they released him, I didn't think of where would be a really good fit for him right now. But to bring him in there, and what's the free agent status of Kenny Lawler and Dalton Schoen? Are those guys both back next year for sure?
No. I mean, they're both, and they were both making a lot of money. We talked yesterday. If you want more CFL, check out the last half of yesterday's WST. Hamilton was on, but then John Hodge came on from 3 Down. We spent more time talking about this. They sort of speculated that, and this goes back to Ed Hervey's rant yesterday. Ironically, from a former receiver saying he's not paying a receiver $300,000.
Gino's not getting 300 here.
I do think that there might be a little bit of a market correction for big money at the wide receiver position. I think some of that might go elsewhere. So, I mean, I think Nick Dembski's in and around 200, and I know John speculated that they go to Kenny and go to Dalton Schoen and try and get both of those guys done for about that same number. That would probably work for Winnipeg. But if either one of those guys are gone, that's a big hole.
I was just looking up because one of the bigger receivers who just signed an extension was Reggie Begelton. I think Begelton's an absolute stud. He's pretty much all Calgary had this year. He just signed for 2 more years at just over $420 for both years combined. So, that's Reggie Begelton in the 210, 215, 220 range. And there might be some bonus money in there from marketing and stuff. But he's a really good receiver. If Reggie Begelton is in that 215-ish range, I'm not sure how many receivers in the league deserve to be above 250. Because Reggie Begelton's right there. And if he's at 215, now he's a little bit later on in his career. But I think that's a reasonable number. And I think you could see a lot of these receivers come in at 230, 240, 250 type of thing.
I agree. And listen, Kenny, I think likes it around Winnipeg. It is a good spot. I could see him jumping at whatever the money is.
He left and saw money elsewhere and then kind of learned his lesson. I think.
Well,
right?
And that's the thing. Although I do wonder how the disappointment of the endings of the last couple seasons sort of affect, before, hey, we're going to probably win. We're going to come back. Now it's like, oh, we've gotten there and had this crazy disappointment at the end of the Grey Cup the last couple seasons. Do you want to sign up for that again? Or are you kind of clean, going fresh? Love to see Schoen back. I mean, he only played a couple games last year. So, kind of run it back with him, preferably Kenny Lawler. And certainly Zach's going to be working hard for that. I mean, if this is his last year as the starting quarterback for Winnipeg, all hands on deck with the team hosting the Grey Cup. They're going to do everything they can to get those guys back. And hopefully get back to the big game with a better result in the end.
If Geno Lewis, and Herb's a man of his word, I would think he's not going to pay Geno Lewis $300,000. I don't think anybody would pay him $300,000. Where do you think Geno Lewis ends up? Man, he had touchdowns in like 8 straight games to end. He was phenomenal in the second half of the season. Really clicked with Trey Ford. The Elks did just move the Dylan Mitchell money, so maybe that frees up a little bit more than Hervey would have been wanting to pay him. But it's not going to be up near the $300,000. Which other team do you think would move on Geno?
Interesting. I wonder where Saskatchewan's at right now. They've already had some pretty good receivers, but I mean, every one of these West teams would love to get one over and, not only have the subtraction from a team like Edmonton, but add that player to themselves. I mean, I would even throw a Winnipeg in there if things don't go well with Kenny Lawler or Dalton Schoen.
Yeah, if they miss both of those guys, yeah.
I mean, the Bombers are going to have money, and they're going to want to spend it to surround Zach Collaros with the best possible weapons that can get them back to the big game and play in front of the home crowd right now. I mean, as far as the teams in the East, obviously he's got history with Montreal, but they've got Mac now, and they've signed him to a bigger, longer-term deal. I have to see where the Argos are at right now with their receiving core. But, I mean, listen, the guy can play. There will be teams that are going to want Geno Lewis. I don't think there's any question about that. It's just a matter of how high the demand is and what that final number is.
Who would you say should be the highest paid receiver in the Canadian Football League?
I mean, that really changes from year to year. I mean, obviously last year McInnes was the guy, and he's Canadian too, isn't he?
He's Canadian. He is Canadian, yeah.
So, I mean, listen, if you're leading the league and you're Canadian, which is a huge benefit to teams. I mean, I would almost say him based on right now, but to me, it's sort of the usual suspects. I mean, I think the guys that we've mentioned here, Geno Lewis, Kenny Lawler, Reggie Bagleton. I mean, Schoen, if he had another season like he had the year before, then yes. And I'm probably selling some of the guys out east a little short, but I think free agency is going to be really interesting this year. But if what John was speculating yesterday happens, and there's a little bit of a deflation of top wide receiver salaries, where that money goes and how teams spend it, I think will be something really interesting to follow.
Well, Bombers are already spending money. They got Evan Holm done today, I think. And then Willie, Kyrie Wilson, Gauthier. Like they've been securing some pieces to that defense, haven't they?
Well, I mean, listen, they've got they had so many guys, as often happens, that have been free agents. And I think most of these guys want to be back. I mean, the one thing that the Bombers have going for them is that under Wade Miller, they've really developed a reputation for taking care of their players, offering some things that maybe a lot of the other teams don't. I mean, the meals every day at the thing, they take care of the families really well. So I think most of the guys that have been here for a year or two and have had some pretty good success aren't really looking to leave. And at times before that was the case. Pumped about Evan Holm coming back. He has been, he sort of was a revelation last year in that Bomber secondary. And,
he's been so good. He's been one of my favorites in the last few years. He doesn't pile up the interceptions, man, but he's around the ball a lot.
Certainly makes guys pay as well if they want to go over the middle. Or no shortage to the big.
Speaking of being around the ball a lot, you game a little bit, don't you?
Yeah.
Have you played that college football game?
I have it. Yeah, the NCAA college football.
Yeah, I've been playing it a ton. I've got a dynasty going right now. I've been recruiting like crazy.
What do you have?
I play on Xbox. Yeah.
Like the new one?
Yeah, like the big black square one.
The what is it? Xbox One or whatever, like the next generation.
Like Xbox Series X or something like that.
Dude, we got to go head to head. We should stream a game.
We should stream a game, actually. That would be pretty fun. We might be able to do that because we've been thinking about starting a EST Twitch gaming channel with the new system and stuff, right? But maybe we'd stream that. So I've been doing my dynasty. And
what team? Notre Dame?
Notre Dame, yeah. And then, but Marshall plays it. He's only 9, and some of those football games are kind of complicated. So he's been playing it quite a bit, and he's getting pretty good at it. But I was telling the boys today, so like he can play on freshman level, and I can play on varsity level, right? So but he crushes me. Like, I don't know what it is, but the difference in those two levels, like he beats me, like legitimately, like 60-13 and thinks he's the king. So what I've done recently, because I don't like getting crushed by that much, I also play on freshmen. But I go with like a little bit of a lesser school. He's been Ohio State since they knocked off Oregon. He's like, that's it. Because he was playing with Oregon, the number one team. I said, they lost to Ohio State. So he loves Ohio State now. So he's playing with Ohio State. And so I played him last night with Indiana. I was Curtis Rourke. And when we're both on freshmen, I can kind of dictate how the game goes. Like, I can pick him off when I need to pick him off. I can throw interceptions to him, and he doesn't catch on really. Like he'll sit there and he loves to throw it to that number 4 on Ohio State, the receiver who's going to go like top 5, Jermaine Smith or something like that. And he'll need a touchdown, and I'll take the cornerback off and be like, I'm bringing pressure, and Marshall's like, oh, you're in trouble, Daddy. You shouldn't leave that guy. And then he throws. So, I've set up 4 or 5 straight games in a row that have come down to the final play with him winning. And he's just like, oh, I can't believe it. And
so
I'm going to have to beat him at some point. But because he's walking around the house being like, hey, you want to go down and lose again? I'm like, oh, my God, kid.
Well, let me give you some advice. Yeah, you better get a couple dubs back in right now, because very soon – it's not going to matter the way Daddy's setting it up. He's going to be wiping the floor with you. That's the way it works with kids.
He's caught on to that game pretty quick with all the different plays and stuff. I'm pretty impressed by it.
That is not that simple.
Great game though. Great game,
dude. It's awesome. I go with LSU.
Okay.
Has been my I was more for the stadium and the intro and everything at the start. But man, it's very, very fun. I love the football games. I'm not really into the Call of Duty or those sort of the shooting games. I've never sort of been into that, but I do love me a good. I absolutely love the football. And you know what's coming out in the next? I think it's 28 days or so. PGA 2K25, and that's probably my all-time favorite games. It started as the Golf Club 2019, done by this.
I remember you talking about that.
HB Studios, and it's in freaking Lunenburg, Nova Scotia. It's a town of 3,000 people, and these guys came up with the what made this game different was that you could create your own courses. There's a course builder in it. So then people could go and build their own courses, build the best courses around the world, and then got great gameplay. So they've now hooked up with Tiger Woods. He's on the cover. They didn't do a 2-4 event, so it's going from 2K23 now to 2K25.
With Tiger on the cover.
It'll be amazing. And that's another thing that there's a good potential we could have some good streams, some fun times with some head-to-head matchups of the lock shop.
That would be
and obviously with the golf, you can do foursomes, you can do alternate shot. There's a lot of things.
I like the idea of telling my wife that, hey, you have to put the kids to bed tonight because I have to go stream a video game for work.
Yeah.
All right, it's a big thing right now.
It's gonna go play 18 with us.
Yeah, that'll go over very well. For sure.
You're a hardworking guy, Dusty. You're a hardworking guy. You know what?
Am I committed to growing this thing or am I not?
Yeah.
One or the other. You can't have it both ways.
You don't even need to say the video game. You know what? I'll be downstairs working on a big content project with Hustler for the Watch.
The big content project.
Yeah.
I love it.
And then all of a sudden, what was all that yelling? Oh, I just about aced a hole in one.
It's the content. Don't worry about it. It's the content. Huss, what's coming up in WST today?
Well, we'll break down yesterday's beatdown of the Canucks. Look ahead to Seattle tomorrow. Ken Weave's going to jump on. Kevin Woodley as well. A little bit of, thoughts on the game last night, as well as Hellebuck's season so far. Some more NHL stuff. A little look ahead to Four Nations with John Mattis of The Score. And that'll be it. Lots of hockey talk right now as we're right in the middle of this crazy 8-game homestand for the Jets. But it's fun. We'll probably roll the standings up a couple times and remind people where they're at, and then of course we'll get to the chat and we'll have people still losing their minds about the third defense pairing and who's the 6D.
Oh yeah,
that's what happened.
That's the greatest of times. Yep, same type of thing. All right, that's going to do it for the Lock Shop today. We will be back tomorrow. Winnipeg Sports Talk firing up about 4 minutes over in the WST channel. We have the oil stream coming up here on Edmonton Sports Talk from 12 until 1. We'll have the voice of the Bakersfield Condors on the show today at 12:30 to talk about Noah Phillip, who's been called up. So we'll get into that. That'll be on TuneIn, on iHeart, and at EdmontonSportsTalk.com. If you're watching over on YouTube, hammer the thumbs up in the Lock Shop before you leave. Turn on autoplay. It'll take you right on over to the oil stream. Thank you very much for joining us on the Lock Shop today. Best of luck tonight, and Huss and I will talk to you tomorrow.
Oilers puck line tonight. Blow out the Wild, please. Thank you very much.
Ooh, how about that?